Hey everybody, welcome to Restless. Glad for those of you that are able to join us. It is a beautiful, beautiful Friday. We are at the solid 2-month point of our quarantine where we've been at home hanging out. I just realized our air conditioner turned on, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn that off so that you guys aren't listening to the background noise. Okay, that should turn off in a minute. So, as you guys are signing in, we're getting more of you. You can see we've got Jazz sleeping up in the corner. He's hanging out, having a good time. We've got our ducks as always. I've got my Coke Zero. I should get a sponsorship from these guys, man. Good stuff. I got my Nerf gun. I got to make sure I remember to shoot out the cameras. Cole, if you're there, make sure you remind me right before I sign off because I have a tendency to be like, hey, I'm done, and then I walk off or something. Got my Mike and Ike's in case my blood sugar goes low. We're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Hey, Aiden, glad you're here. We have a pretty short program for today. I was actually sick yesterday, so I'm a little behind, but we're still going to have a good time. We're still going to have fun. So I don't want to talk too long because my throat's still a little sore. Got like sinus pressure and things like that. So if you guys want to keep me in your prayers, I appreciate it. But I'm feeling a lot better today already. So today we're going to take a look at rivalries and handling conflict. So we're going to play a game about famous rivals, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how we handle conflict and how we can handle them in a healthy way and how we can handle them in a godly way as well. So we're going to start off with a game called Famous Rivals. I'm going to pull it up on the screen right here. Okay, the way this works, it's more just like trivia about famous rivals. You guys know there's like Batman and the Joker. There's James Bond, and he's always got a villain that he's against, and there's just conflict, right? And so the way this game is going to work is we're going to give you guys multiple choice questions, and then you can just chime in with whatever answer you think is correct. So typically it'll be like an A, B, or C, or it'll give you 3 options, and you just pick one, and you guys can go ahead and type in your answers as we go. And there's no pressure. I mean, if we get every single one wrong, I'm not going to judge you at all. They're not easy. But some of the ones that I know a little bit of information about, I'll try to teach you guys a little bit about some of them as well. So first one we're going to go with is what cola company launched the blind taste test against its rival? So basically, I'm going to slide over a little bit. Ooh, I just knocked down the picture. So basically, I think it was either late 80s or early 90s, one of the cola companies, either Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, or Dr. Pepper, I don't think there's a cola at the end of that one, but launched a blind taste test where basically they would go out onto the streets and they would look like they were interviewing people, and they would have them do like, which one do you like better? Do you like this one or this one? And like, you wouldn't know what can you were drinking out of. And then they'd lift it up, and people would always be like, oh my gosh, I thought my favorite was this one, but apparently it's this one. So that was the blind taste test. Hey, Cole, welcome. Glad you're here. So go ahead and write in your answer. Who do you think launched the blind taste test? Do you think it was Coke, Pepsi, or Dr. Pepper? You guys can go ahead and type in your answers. No fear of getting it wrong. It's not like it matters. So I'm going to go ahead and just give you guys the answer because we don't want to spend too much time doing this. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. So the answer is Pepsi. Okay, so this was a huge ad campaign. It was all over the place. And basically they would just do stuff on the street. They would interview people. But Aiden, Dr. Pepper is my favorite of these 3. And my sister actually went to school in Texas where Dr. Pepper was invented. And we went to a Dr. Pepper museum. And we went to the original Dr. Pepper factory. And it was a really cool tour that we were able to do. Aiden, a fun fact about the original Dr. Pepper manufacturing plant was that the entire building was built on a little bit of a slope. And then there was a drain in the corner. So then at the end of the day, when they'd been working with all the sugar and things like that, they could just hose down the entire inside of the building. All of the stuff would just flow down the drain in the corner. So I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, so let's go to this next one for bitter rivals or famous rivals. Baseball rivals New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox have how many combined World Series champions? So how many, if you add up the number of Red Sox championships and add up the number of Yankees championships, how many do you think they have? Your options are 35, 45, or 55. To put it in perspective, the Padres don't have any. so the fact that the lowest option is 35 is pretty significant. So I'm sure this is just an arbitrary pick. Good job for getting that last one right, Cole. So we've got, do you think it's 35, 45, or 55? For those sports fans, I don't know if Brent has come in yet. He said he might be here today, but he's one of the ones that would probably know this answer. So we've got, Ian's got 45, 55, 45. So nobody's going 35. And the answer is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 35. Oh, so you guys, just to put it in perspective, that means like there's probably been maybe 100 total. So 150 or 30% of the time, two teams have won it between the 30 plus teams. Okay, so let's take a look at this next one. Okay. James Bond has his fair share of rivals, but how many actors have played James Bond? So, the James Bond character in the movies, there's lots of different movies, but we have this different actors that play him throughout history. Usually they each do 3 or 4 movies. Some of them have done more. Some of them have only done a couple. But how many different James Bonds, how many different versions of, or how many different actors do you think have played James Bond? And yes, Cole, I do remember that. That was pretty wretched. So, so here we go. How many actors do you think have played James Bond? 6, 7, or 9? Ian's going with 9. Aiden's going with 7. Okay. Get your answers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 7. So Aiden, you got that one right. So Cole, James Bond is a very famous hero movie type guy. He's basically a secret agent, and he's always working undercover, and he has lots of cool gadgets. So that's who James Bond is. The person who wrote the books that all of his movies are based off was a guy named Ian Fleming. Okay. So you've heard of this guy. I know that, Cole. Batman's rival, the Joker, first appeared in comics in what year? So I know, Cole, you've heard of Batman and Joker. When do you think Joker first appeared in the Batman comics? Do you think it was 1920, 1930, or 1940? What decade do you think it was? In the 30s, 40, or 20s, 30, or 40? When do you think the Joker first appeared in comics? 20, 30, or 40? Go ahead and put your answers down. Yeah, I know Batman's your favorite. That's why I knew when you said you didn't know who James Bond was. I said I know you'll know who Joker is, or Batman is. But what year do you think Joker first appeared? So Batman's been around for quite a while. When do you think the Joker first appeared? We got 1940, 1940. Okay, and here we go. And the answer is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good job, guys. 1940. You guys both Ian and Aiden got that one right, and Cole got that one right. Okay, so next one. The Aaron Burr Alexander Hamilton duel was fought in which state on July 11th, 1804? So for those of you guys that are obsessed with the musical Hamilton, you know, everybody's talking about Hamilton. This is the same Alexander Hamilton that was based off of. And if you're not into it, or if you don't haven't learned about it in history yet, you can just take a guess. Where do you think the duel was? New Jersey, New York, or Pennsylvania? Any guesses? I mean, it's a 1 in 3 chance. So what do you think? You got New Jersey, New York, or Pennsylvania? Okay, Aiden's got New Jersey. Cole is exasperated, or no? Oh, it's a bat. I thought that was a person holding up their hands like this. You know, that emoji. So we got Pennsylvania. The answer is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Aiden got that one right. It was New Jersey. New Jersey. So we got a couple more. We're gonna keep going. Here. Okay. So the rivalry between Ohio State and Michigan dates back to an actual war over what? So there's a football rivalry where these two schools are competitive against each other. So the rivalry dates back to what? A war over a football game, high taxes, or the border? What do you guys think? What do you think the war that originally started the rivalry between Michigan and Ohio State in their football programs? What are your guesses as to what originated their rivalry? So we got, I'm not sure if Cole is frustrated or fierce. So Aiden's going with the border. Okay. Ian's going with football. So get your answers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It was the border. Yes. So the original conflict was over the border, but they do have, because of the conflict, they do have a football rivalry now. Now that they're not as worried about the border anymore. Okay, just a couple more. Okay, here we go. In the movie Rocky Balboa, who was Rocky Balboa's Stars and Stripes shorts wearing rival? Okay, so who is the character that wore Stars and Stripes on his boxing shorts in the movie Rocky Balboa? This is a tough one. If you guys, it's an older movie, so maybe you haven't seen it, but yeah, no idea. Clubber Lang. So Clubber Lang is a good guess. Clubber Lang, Apollo Creed, or Ivan Drago. So this is a tough one. Because all three characters are in the Rocky Balboa movies. So these all three, like if you've seen the movies, you're like, okay, I've heard of that one, so maybe that's it. But all three of these guys have been in the Rocky Balboa movie as one of the guys that he boxed against. But only one of them was the one that wore Stars and Stripes. So the answer is Apollo Creed. Apollo Creed. Okay, so next one. Yeah, that was a tough one. Will Wheaton became Sheldon Cooper's rival when Will didn't. Okay, so for those of you guys don't know, this is from the TV show Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory, and Will Wheaton and Sheldon Cooper had a bit of a feud. And what started it? So this is from a TV show, Big Bang Theory. They became rivals when Will didn't, 1, sign an autograph, 2, show up at a Star Trek convention, or 3, follow him on Twitter. Any guesses? It's a tough one if you haven't seen the TV show, but it's helpful if you know who Will Wheaton is. Yeah, Ian, no clue. This is a tough one. The answer is, so basically, the premise is Sheldon Cooper was really excited to go to a Star Wars convention because he wanted to meet Will Wheaton, who was kind of his hero. And then he realized Will Wheaton wasn't nearly as into it as he was, an actor that was in the show. So then he all of a sudden went to this thing just to see you, and you weren't even there. And then they just play up the conflict from there. So the answer would show up at a Star Trek convention. Okay, we got two more. Here we go. Okay, this is one of my favorites. Long-standing rivals Wile E. Coyote, Roadrunner appeared in how many cartoons? So how many different Wile E. Coyote cartoons are there? So for those of you guys, that was a older cartoon. Probably started, I don't know when it started, probably in the 70s or 80s. Maybe even before that, I'm not sure. But I know it was really popular when I was a kid. And basically, the coyote was always trying to catch the Roadrunner, and the Roadrunner was always getting away. Yeah, it was 72. There were a few, so that's got a chance. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the answer, good job, Ian. You got it right. 48. So last one. You guys may not have heard of this one either, but it is one of the more significant ones of the history pieces that we've done so far. The real life rivalry between what two families lasted over decades. So this was an actual real life rival where they were killing each other because just these two families hated each other. The Murphys and the Jacksons, the Hatfields and the McCoys, or the Smiths and the Joneses. So this is a tough one, but if you'd learned about them at some point, you'd probably remember this one. But what do you guys think? Which one rings a bell? The Murphys and the Jacksons, the Hatfields and the McCoys, or the Smiths and the Joneses? No clue? Knows? Okay, so back in the Old West, one of the families that had a lot of conflict. Yes, Cole got that right. That's the Hatfields and the McCoys. There's been lots of TV documentaries all about it. These two families had some serious conflicts and just ride around and try to kill each other. So it was definitely an Old West style rivalry. Guys, about a little bit is one of the things. Not as much about rivalry as it is more about conflict. Right. One of the things that's really important for us when it comes to navigating conflict is to handle it in a mature and godly way, right? So things that we have at our churches, we actually, for our church leadership like myself, we actually have a contract that, like, this is how we handle conflict, because we know that conflict can be a very toxic thing. Is if you guys have ever seen people that don't get along, like whenever one of them walks into the room, they're always at each other's throats and they're always experiencing that kind of conflict, and they're always being aggressive towards each other. And it's like one of those things where it's uncomfortable for everyone. But one of the things that's really important when it comes to us handling conflict is one of the things that we struggle with when it comes, we have the sense that we are right. You know, where you've been in a conflict, it's you feel like somebody did. Yeah, your mom Hatfield is one. Yeah, I believe. I would think maybe you'd heard of them having grown up in a little bit, or over in Texas. One of the things with handling conflict, and one of the things is, like, when it comes to handling conflict, being able to have a headed conversation, both sides feel heard, right? It's not necessarily, you don't have to point to the other person. But one of the roots of conflict is you don't feel like the person is listening to you, or you feel like they did something. Cool guys, it is always the person's fault. I don't know about you, but do you think of it is I usually have a hand to play. I usually have a little bit to do with it. But we also, in the midst of conflict, be willing to look at this way. I know I've said stuff that I didn't mean to say as a mean or a nice person, but sometimes how they receive what I said, right? One of my mom's sayings that she uses all the time, she goes, "It's not what you say, but it's how you say it." But that doesn't necessarily mean that the person didn't find it offensive. Right. So one of the things that we do, and it's somewhat human nature, right? If somebody does something me mad, I have a couple things that I try to. Sometimes I go, okay, well, I'm going to go be really mean back, right? And that's definitely the middle school mentality is like, hey, if somebody's mean to me, I'm going to go be mean back to them. Or the other mentality is, if somebody's mean, instead of handling the conflict between them and myself, I'm going to go and then talk mean about them to all the other people and get everybody else to like them. Get everybody on my side so we can have a gang mentality and make that person feel excluded from the group, right? And neither of those are very healthy forms of conflict management. So the first thing you need to do when you're in a conflict is, one, you can, depending on what kind of conflict, it is okay to get your parents involved, right? But it's not about getting your parents involved so you can get the other person in trouble, right? A lot of times when we have conflict, our goal is to get the other person that we're in conflict with punished, or we want to make the other person that hurt us, we want to make them suffer. Making the other person suffer is not the goal of resolving a conflict, right? The goal of resolving a conflict is that both sides might feel heard, and that basically, if a relationship is a healthy relationship. So that's the goal of conflict management. Like a lot of times we say conflict management is, I just want the other person to be punished for what they did. I want the other person to get in trouble. But really the goal of reconciliation, the goal of conflict is to bring a relationship back into a healthy place, right? And I don't know what kind of conflicts you guys have. You do have conflicts with people that need to be punished, but it's not our role to take that into our hands to punish them. That's when you get an adult involved, or that's when you get a parent involved. But the other thing to do is, one, go at it with a level head. So one of the things it talks about in the Bible, it says, don't lay down for the night when you're still angry, right? It's talking about like, don't let it stew, don't let it go, But the other thing is, when you are in conflict, sometimes it can be helpful to take a step back, right? And think about it a little bit, because for those of you guys that are kind of like me, I'm a high energy guy. So sometimes, like, if there's a conflict, like, I immediately just want to pounce back, and like we just go back and forth. And before you know it, it's like, what are we even arguing about? We're just being mean, right? So sometimes it can be helpful to take a step back, to think a little bit, and go into it with a level head when you're not escalated, right? One of the words that Carolyn uses a lot in therapy is like, this is an escalated situation. This is a thing where the energy levels are high, the emotions are high, and sometimes it can be helpful to step away for a minute and de-escalate the situation. You know, if you're charging at somebody and they keep charging back, and this is definitely like a sibling thing, happens a lot, where one sibling does this and then the other sibling comes in, and then before you're calling each other names, you're in wrestling, you're doing whatever. And sometimes it can be helpful, step back. Okay, was that really, why am I behaving the way I am, right? And one of the things that's really interesting is when we step back, we get to see a little bit of the emotions that are behind what we're doing. So for those of you that were at summer camp this summer, chance to go to some seminars, and I went to an emotional intelligence seminar, and it was really interesting, where it talked about, it's really important for us to step into and kind of label what we're feeling, label the experience that we're having. Because a lot of times when we're in conflict, where it's like, I was mad, right? Like, that's as far as we make you upset me. But if we slow down a little bit and we really examine the emotion behind our conflict, we might find that there's a deeper issue, and we might be able to better heal the situation by being able to label it, identify why it was hurtful, and then sharing with somebody. Like if you have a sibling, and let's say you're on a Zoom chat with your class, and your brother walks by and smacks you on the head, and you just get up and you start punching him back, and being able to step back and say, hey, I didn't like it when you did that, because when you did that, it made me feel like you pushed me around and you can do whatever you want to me in front of my friends, right? Sometimes I grew up, my best friends was a family of 4 boys. And the reality of it is, like, most of their conflict was them showing off to me, to each other, right? So most of their conflicts, like when I was around, was just like, because I wanted Richard to think I was the best at this, or I wanted Richard to think I was the best at this. But the reality of it is, like, I didn't even care, right? But the reality is sometimes that was their emotion that was getting into it, and that was how they had a lot of their conflict. Okay, so the 3 things. 1, label your emotions. 2, step back a little bit so that you can assess the situation. 3 is a twofold one, is either handle the conflict one-on-one with the person and don't try to ostracize them, and ostracize is the word for don't try to make them feel excluded from everybody else by getting a gang mentality of a bunch of people to be up against them. And then the 4th one is, if necessary, get a leader or a parent in to help you resolve the conflict. So basically, sometimes it can be helpful if you're in conflict to have an impartial third party. Somebody who doesn't have an agenda, somebody who doesn't, it's not as important for them to basically be able to assess the situation, try to figure out what's really going on, because they are not emotionally involved. And the reality of it is, some of the best relationships you will ever have are the relationships with people that you have that you've experienced, gone through conflict with, and have come out stronger, right? So my best friend and I, and we had a major conflict when we were in our early 20s, right? And it was significant, and I don't need to share it with you. And it wasn't he was wrong or I was wrong or anything like that. We came to butt heads about some behaviors, and eventually, in the end, we both looked at it and we said the reason we had that conflict was because we weren't communicating very well about the way we felt about something, right? And now we're able to look back and we see, like, okay, we were dumb 20-year-old guys. Like, of course you had conflict because you weren't communicating. Who's successfully doing that? But we're able to look back on that, and we have a stronger relationship now than we would have had because we haven't experienced conflict. So for those of you guys that have siblings, then you guys are always fighting. My sister and I have an awesome relationship. We love each other well. Man, when I was in middle school, my sister is 18 months older than me. And like, whenever her friends were over, I try to come over and come around and like show off and like, look how awesome I am. I'm a 6th grade boy. And, 8th grade girls don't really want to have a 6th grade guy hanging out with them. And my sister and I always had conflicts. And but the reality of it, my sister is very loving and very caring person, but I was also a very testing and trying person. So the reality of it is, sometimes the conflicts that we have now can grow into great relationships later. So it's worth investing your time and your energy into seeing if you can experience healing with siblings, with friends, with family. And one of the things that's really important in this season is you guys are spending a lot of time around a few people. And so the illustration I used on our spring missions trip is, I said, sometimes people doing things that irritate us can be like sandpaper, right? You rub your hand against the sandpaper and, eventually it's not that big of a deal, right? But eventually, if you do it enough times, your hands get raw and it's irritating, right? So one rub against sandpaper, not a big deal. Over and over and over and over and over for over a long period of time, eventually your fingers are going to start bleeding, right? So that's one of the things that as we're in quarantine and we're spending so much time around people that we care about, but also we don't really have the opportunity to really get away from the people, it can get exhausting. So one of the other things that I think is really important for us in this season, and this is really where the heart of Jesus comes in, is it's important for us to show grace to others, right? Because the reality of it is your parents, they might be struggling a little bit right now. They're kind of overwhelmed. You know, some of them are sure you have what's you. They're worried about health and concerns, and they're watching them stressed out. So it's a little bit of grace. Your siblings, right? They're feeling pretty cooped up. So make sure you're showing your siblings a little bit of grace. And one of the things that comes from the Bible is that we give grace because we have received grace. The grace that we've received from Jesus, the forgiveness that we've received from Jesus, isn't something that we deserve, but it's something that he freely gave. So when you feel like your friends or your siblings don't deserve grace in this season, I want to encourage you guys to make sure that you're showing grace, because that's what Jesus did for us. So I hope you guys enjoyed Restless today. I will see you guys in our Zoom sessions on Monday and Wednesday. There's going to be no Restless next week. So next Friday, there's no Restless session. I'm going to be busy, so I won't be able to make it, but we will still have our Monday and Wednesday Zoom sessions as well as devotionals. So I love you guys. I look forward to seeing you. Cole, thanks for the reminder. See if we can shoot that right out. Oh, God, close. Oh, I hit the last one. Getting close. Oh, it didn't stick. I think I'm out. Yeah. I came pretty close, but they didn't stick. Maybe 2 weeks where we kick off our summer of restlessness. Hope to see you guys soon.